Well, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Well, evening over here.
Evening here as well. We are just 1 hour behind you.
So maybe just I'll just kick it off, and then maybe we can start with some questions. So it's really of interest to what you were doing. I can share a little bit what I'm seeing in large companies going on, and to a certain extent, it might be easier if I'd have a whiteboard, but I don't. So let's share. I think one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in large organizations is that we need to create this kind of dual culture where we have an execution engine where we continue to execute the businesses that we have, that we continue at doing that well, but at the same time create a kind of parallel culture, which is an innovation culture, which functions very differently. So while the execution culture is based on improving a business model that the company knows that managers have been managing, the senior leadership probably grew up with, in quotes, over years or decades, we need to continue to do that. That's a linear process that's about lean in the traditional sense, cutting out the fat and making it as efficient and as effective as possible. But besides that, I think what we really need to do is explore more with a very different approach, and that's the lean startup approach, which is it's very iterative, it's all about exploring, it's all about research, it's all about making mistakes. So while in the innovation engine, you need to actually reward people for making mistakes, in the execution engine, you'll punish people for making mistakes. So see how this is a very different culture. So you can't innovate if you can't make mistakes, because it's the essence of the lean startup approach is that you try something out, you test some hypothesis that you think could work, and then you learn from that, and you reiterate back into reiterating your new idea. So that is something that we've seen is very complicated, very difficult to do, and that's why we came up with a new tool called the Culture Map. So you can Google it, Culture Map, a couple of blog posts we did on the topic, which is about how can we design intentionally an organizational culture. So that's the biggest challenge, I would say, that I can see on the macro level. If we go now, just dive into the micro level for a second, what are the biggest challenges and mistakes of people applying the lean startup approach? And I'd say that's very similar in large companies and in startups. One of the main issues is that people fall in love with their ideas too early. They put a premium on the idea. Ideas are cheap, ideas are free. Ideas are worth nothing if you want, because initial ideas will transform. And they transform by just, number one, shaping them with the tools like the business model canvas and value proposition canvas, and then by testing them again and again and again. So don't fall in love with your first ideas. Come up with alternatives and make peace with the fact that those ideas are going to transform. That's why I always smile when I hear companies setting up innovation or idea competitions, because they put a premium on the idea. Yet what you really want to do is accept that initial ideas are going to transform. And that's a big idea, because many of you have certainly been in meetings where there were long conversations around what's the best idea. Who's been in a meeting where everybody was kind of arguing what the best idea was, and there was a long conversation around what's the best idea we should pursue? Who's ever been in a meeting like that? Hands up. Now, that's usually a waste of time. Why? Because there's only one judge of your ideas, and that's the market. It's not senior leadership, it's not yourself, it's not your team, it's the market. So while we can look at business models and value propositions and assess their design to a certain extent, at the end of the day, the only judge and jury and executioner, I'd say, of our ideas is the market. So we need to test them immediately. And that sounds obvious, sounds easy, but in how many companies does evidence really trump opinion? And that's something that we need to get across as a cultural change at the senior level. They need to be into I have this thing over my head that may change a bit, otherwise I look like an angel. So that's what we need to be able to do, is to get senior leadership to understand that opinion is not what matters. The opinion of the senior leadership is less important than actually pushing people to gather evidence in the market. So that's a big kind of thing on the ground. Another thing, falling in love with your first ideas, really a big risk. The other big thing is, and I think here is where the wording in the lean startup process, as coined by Eric Ries, is a bit problematic. The circle, I don't know if you guys seen this already, it's about build, measure, learn, right? This circle around, I'm going to build something, I'm going to measure if it works, and then I'm going to learn. Now, a lot of folks take the build a lot too literally, because the first thing you want to do is not actually build a prototype. The first thing you do is test the customer. What do I mean with that? What I mean is that you need to really go deep in your understanding of what the customers are trying to achieve. We call that jobs to be done. What their pains are, what's really holding them back from doing a job well, and what their gains are. What are they looking for in terms of objectives to achieve? So the first thing you want to test and have evidence on is the existence and the prioritization of your customers' jobs, pains, and gains. So before you come up with any kind of artifact, even a PDF description, a document, a Word document describing your ideas, your offer, or a physical prototype of one that you want to make, that's not the first thing you need to do. The first thing you need to do is test some fundamental assumptions. Do customers even care about the jobs you're trying to help them solve? Do they even have the pains that you're trying to help them relieve? So often people start with a solution in mind and they want to test an artifact, a thing, like a product, a service, a technology, but that comes a lot later down the road usually. What we first need to test are the jobs, pains, and gains of our customers. That's a big mistake we see all the time. And why is that important? Because you have companies like Caterpillar or GE, they have very capital-intensive things that they're building. They immediately say, well, we can't do build, measure, learn. Or take MasterCard, they make transaction platforms. They will say, well, when we build something, it needs to be secure, it needs to be reliable, that's what our clients want. That's because they always first think, when we say prototype or testing, that they need to make the thing. But lean startup is actually about testing assumptions, about hypothesis. And the first and foremost, most important hypotheses are usually customer hypotheses that you want to start with before you actually look at the solution. So that's just a couple of rough learnings, some of the big things that I see that people are getting wrong, and not setting up the dual culture, and falling in love with their ideas too early, and testing the wrong thing first, testing a solution first, while you first want to test your customers, in quotes. So 3 big things that I've seen go wrong in many companies, but there's a big shift going on. A lot of companies are trying to change, and I'm confident that with the tools and processes and solutions that are out there, companies will get there. I haven't seen very many that do it extremely well, but it's also a very hard task. There's no quick fix to that.